Stand by for on air. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the School of Activism. This is a live online 4-week workshop on the Long War and our future, part of a continuing discussion in the School of Activism. And I want to thank, just at the beginning, Jeff Yaroslow and David Fisher and Kevin Fleming of Robert Greenwald's Brave New Foundation and Wesley Saver of the Peace and Justice Resource Center for making this program possible. I'm Tom Hayden, by the way, and above all, I want to honor the grassroots forces that I have had the opportunity to meet with in at least 50 cities that I've traveled to in the past few years, as well as people in many NATO countries. Next week, by the way, I'll be at First Church in Cambridge, Mass., the University of New Hampshire and St. Anselm's in New Hampshire, and going down to Washington for dialogues with members of Congress and national security people in the Capitol. The people that I meet in these towns across the country may not be so visible these days, but I know you're not going anywhere, and neither am I. You are the heart and soul of the peace and justice movement from all sorts of backgrounds, working from year to year on issues and campaigns as they arise. They sure do arise. Together you make a tremendous difference in the agendas and in the results of politics in closely contested races in particular. Even small groups make an enormous difference in those races that are decided by 1 or 2%. These days, I get the feeling that we're all overwhelmed by issue after issue that's hitting us. Wall Street bailouts, budget cuts, health care, unemployment, immigration, pollution, global warming, Phoenix, pressuring Democrats to do the right thing, fighting back against the Tea Party. It never ends, and it's hard on our energy and our commitment and our time. That's one reason I think there's relatively little noise about Afghanistan these days. After the significant American troop withdrawals and the decline of American casualties in Iraq, many people who fought against Bush's war in Iraq moved on to other issues, and many others adopted a kind of wait-and-see position on Afghanistan and Pakistan. Meanwhile, fortunately, public opinion has continued to swing away from those wars. About 75% of Democrats and 55% of independents are against our policies in Afghanistan. In the last congressional cycle, 100 House members voted against further funding, and 162 voted in favor of an exit strategy, including a timetable for withdrawal. Majority of those votes were Democrats. There were 12 Republicans. And over in the Senate, 18 senators, all of them Democrats, voted for the exit strategy measure. Our president, Barack Obama, has frequently indicated his concern about public opinion on these issues. If you read the excellent book by Bob Woodward that's called Obama's Wars, it's a must-read, really. You'll find him saying, and I'm quoting here, "I can't lose the Democratic Party, and people at home don't want to hear that we're going to be there another 10 years. He repeated that he was not going to spend $1 trillion over a 10-year counterinsurgency strategy there, and he was quoted as saying, "I want an exit strategy." The president has now taken the position that he will begin to withdraw troops from Afghanistan this July, but he has not indicated how many he will initially withdraw. He has said, however, that the withdrawals will be more or less complete, nothing fixed there, by the end of 2014. So at a cost of $120 billion or so to the taxpayer per year in Afghanistan alone, I think a 4-year phased reduction will cost $250 billion more. That would bring the total cost of the Afghanistan war to $1 trillion, which does not include the long-term costs for veterans' health care that's incurred. The Iraq war will cost $3 trillion, according to Columbia University's Joseph Stiglitz and Harvard University's Linda Bilmes. That would mean an expenditure in the trillions of dollars for these wars at a time of economic deficits and budget cuts. You cannot be a war hawk and a deficit hawk at the same time. The American casualties in these wars are over 5,000 dead, 1,000 of them under President Obama, and at least 100,000 Americans wounded. The Iraqi civilian casualties are covered up or blurred or minimized, but in Iraq they're in the hundreds of thousands, and in Afghanistan so far the numbers are in the tens of thousands. There are two key decisions for President Obama ahead. The July decision, which may or may not already be made, on how many troops to initially withdraw, and then the December deadline, which we've all but forgotten, which currently is calling for all American troops and bases to be pulled out of Iraq. Now, there is obviously enormous pressure to minimize the number of American troops being withdrawn in Afghanistan and to delay the departure of troops from Iraq. And right now, there is relatively little countervailing force against the Pentagon and contractors and many who want to extend those wars. But public opinion, I think, will have the final say in the 2012 national elections. As Barbara Lee has pointed out, the peace movement can pressure President Obama to change his political calculus and campaign on a 2012 platform of trying to end two wars, or a platform of being bogged down in two wars. We need to be out there in every swing district hammering a similar message to that of Congresswoman Lee. President Obama will need every peace voter he can persuade, and right now he has lost much of his original base, as you know. What we're up against here, and what I want to talk about tonight, is the doctrine of the long war. Virtually no one knows about it. There's an excellent book edited by Andrew Bacevich on the long war, and it appears in journals like the aptly named Long War Journal. The leading counterinsurgency advisor to General Petraeus in Iraq, David Kilcullen, has written a book called The Accidental Guerrilla, which is subtitled Fighting Small Wars in the Midst of a Long One. By small wars, apparently he does mean Iraq. And I think that there's a reason that the long war is kept relatively silent, because the American people would be quite shocked at the implications if they knew. For one thing, it's projected to last 50 to 80 years, a war against Muslim militants in many countries, a dozen currently. If you see it this way, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and other countries are a sequence of wars in the context of the long war. They flow seamlessly one into another. Its original title was the Global War on Terrorism, but that was rebranded as the Long War by General Abizaid and some others in about 2005. These wars, within the context of the long war, will cost our taxpayers many, many trillions of dollars over the $4 trillion that I've projected for Afghanistan and Iraq. They already, in their cost, are strangling our ability to invest in our domestic priorities: schools, colleges, green jobs, healthcare, housing, and so on. They guarantee that there will be thousands more of American casualties and civilian casualties, often on secret or virtually secret battlefields. And there'll be greater secrecy from the secret operations on the current battlefields to secrets that are just increasingly held from the American people. The long war, if it doesn't end, if we don't end it, will span over 15 presidential terms into the future. People not born yet will be voting on these issues if the long war is allowed to continue. The long war does not make us safer because it makes terrorist activities, terrorist actions against the United States virtually inevitable. And if those attacks occur, powerful forces are already prepared to rewrite the Patriot Act and push this country farther to the right into a deeper national security state. So it's as if the long war is a deep-seated, incurable gangrene. And people have said to me, don't talk about it because no one wants to think about it. That's precisely why it has to be discussed. First of all, we have to understand that the Afghan war and the Pakistan wars are woven into several crises at the same time. A virtually permanent American crisis, the economy, the oil dependence, the pillaging of the domestic budgets, and so on. And the long war and its manifestation in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Yemen sometimes seems to retreat or disappear, go silent, go quiet, off the media, and then all of a sudden there's the sudden crisis and it's back again. So I think we need, therefore, to use even our downtime wisely. The long war, in other words, requires a long peace movement. It requires continued people pressure against the pillars of the policy itself. A war, when you think about it, is based on a number of foundations or pillars. One, the pillar of public opinion. Two, the pillar of budgetary resources. Three, the pillar of available military forces, troops. Four, the pillar of a global supportive alliance. Five, the pillar of moral reputation, among others. And if the government cannot be persuaded by logic, all that is left is to gradually wear out the government by wearing down these pillars. So let's go through them and see where we are. In terms of public opinion, as I've pointed out, a majority of people, 60%, think that the war in Afghanistan should not have been fought. It's a mistake. Obviously, the course of action for the peace movement needs to be to persuade undecided voters, to strengthen the commitment of committed activists, of course, but to move the undecided voter into a dissenting voter and an opposition voter. Secondly, there's the pillar of the budget crisis. As I've already said, the long war and Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq are deeply threatening to our deficits and to our budget crisis.